Free rent heats up in a second stimulus package currently up for debate. But what's happening with rent moratoriums state by state? Hey everybody, this is LALATE with a second stimulus check and stimulus package update for today. Our fourth of 5 second stimulus check updates. Earlier today, we detailed first the check itself, also SSI, SSDI, Social Security, and VA benefits. Second, our second stimulus check video focused on hazard pay. Our third was on PUA, FPUC, and UI. And this one is going to trigger always rental assistance. You know, yesterday I went through rent moratoriums, and let me recap and explain that a little bit more. And also I will be getting to free rent. There's a lot at play in a second stimulus package. Rent moratoriums and free rent are very different instruments, and they are both on the books, and some of them are actively live right now. Let me get to rent moratorium. What is a rent moratorium, and how do you find out if your local county or city has a rent moratorium? A rent moratorium means that landlords cannot evict you if you rent your place during a prescribed period of time. It means that they cannot go to court and evict you during this moratorium. Now, there is also other types of moratoriums, which I'm not going to detail today. I've detailed them before, and those are mortgage moratoriums. For example, if you own your home and you're afraid of, and you can't make your mortgage, and you're afraid your lender is going to foreclose upon you, or if you're a landlord and you're not getting enough rent and you're afraid you're going to lose your property as well, that is a different type of moratorium, and those dates are still in place in some regards. But rent moratorium means that they cannot evict you during the moratorium. Yesterday, what I did was I pulled a news report, and I fully disclaimed in reading the news report to you that it's not written that day. It was a few days at least old, and it went state by state, but not 50 something states, in detailing rent moratoriums. It said this state, for example, has a moratorium, and this state has a moratorium. 3 things you need to understand as I detail you in this video about rent moratoriums. 1, some states have moratoriums until the pandemic ends. This is great news. So it basically means they can't evict any tenants until the pandemic ends. It's an open moratorium. It does not expire currently. So that is a great situation. One of them was Delaware. So, for example, if you rent in Delaware, you're not making rent. You can't make rent. The landlord cannot evict you now, can evict you next month, and can't evict you until the moratorium ends. Second, some states say that they have a rent moratorium until a certain week. Some weeks, have passed. Some weeks are coming up. What's important for you to understand means that if those dates do not get changed and they ultimately come up and they expire, it means that on that date, the landlords will start to rush to court and evict those tenants that haven't been paying rent. So you need to be attentive to that date. Third, and this was the most common question I got yesterday in the comments. People said, well, you didn't mention my state. And how about my state? What about my state? Well, as I said in yesterday's video, that was an article that talked about some states. It didn't mention 50-something states. And certainly I can't cover 50 states in one video that's 15 minutes long. What I recommend you to do, and this is what I did with a viewer. For example, a viewer in the comments said yesterday, how about Alabama? Does Alabama have a rent moratorium? When I saw the viewer's comment, this is what I did, and you should do the same. I simply went to Google. And I typed in Alabama rent moratorium. Yeah, I know moratorium's a hard word to spell. Google will fix the spelling for you. Don't worry about it. Just type in Alabama rent moratorium into Google. Immediately, news stories came up, and you can see the news stories, the date they're published. It says 5 days ago, 1 day ago, 7 days ago. And ultimately, it will send you to Google News and it'll show news articles from the state of Alabama that talks about Alabama rent moratorium. And it only took me all of 1 minute to see what was the rent moratorium date, if at all, in Alabama. It's as simple as that. So if you're watching this channel and you want to know, let me see some of the comments right here. Someone said Rhode Island. What about Rhode Island? Go to right to Google, type in Rhode Island rent moratorium, and you will see news articles right away that'll show what is the moratorium. Next, some viewers have said, and this is very important, and this is a little bit of complex. I don't want to put you to sleep. Some states, the governor issues orders that says no one in the state can be evicted under the moratorium of this entire state. Some peculiar states say, as a governor, I'm going to let the counties, I'm going to let the cities decide. Those are very few, but they are out there. So in some states, the governor just doesn't want to make the decision, he or she, so he lets the county or city make the decision themselves. Let's get to free rent. So a lot of you have asked about free rent. How much money is it? How do you apply? Where do you get it? When do you get it? What is the manner to get it? And where does it go? All right, so under a second stimulus package, the free rent would be yours for rent and for utilities. Those two things. Where is this coming from? It's coming from the HEROES Act. The HEROES Act is currently in the Senate. It came from the House. It was written by Democrats. It's currently before Republicans. It calls for a fund. It calls for a big fund. And in that big fund, renters would apply for rental assistance, in stating that because of COVID-19, they couldn't make rent and they need rent money. What the fund would do is it would send payment money, route money to the renter that the renter can use to pay the landlord for rent. It would give the renter also money to pay the landlord, to pay the utility bills if the renter pays utilities as well. I got a couple questions, and I would think I would have gotten more, but I certainly want to ask the question, so I'm going to answer my own question right now. I'm going to respond to my own question right now, which is, okay, how does the money get routed, and how does it go to the landlord, and how do you apply? And we simply don't know. A lot of these things, when there's a congressional bill and they talk about establishing things, they establish it and then later on they figure out how to do it, which is just a hot mess. I don't like that. So a lot of you will say, how do I apply for this rental assistance? I don't know. It doesn't say it in the bill. How do you get that money routed to the landlord from you? I don't know. How many months do you get for rental assistance? I don't know. If I did, I would tell you. Ultimately, the way the bill is written is that the money is only for rent. So I don't want to hear that you need it to pay, your groceries. The way the bill is written, the money would only land in the landlord's hand for purposes of your rent. It can't be used for anything else. Utilities is only for purposes of utilities. How many months you would get, I don't know. How would it get routed to the utilities business? I don't know. Ultimately, it is great news because it's free rent. It's free utilities. It's for people, and it would continue into 2021. So we're talking about a lot of money. The plan also proposes to give money to landlords. What's really good about this is that it ensures that you don't lose the place in which you live. It ensures that you are not displaced and made homeless. Now, that is the free rent we've talked about. That is the moratorium on rental evictions now from your state. There's something totally separate from that, and that is a federal moratorium on rental assistance. The Warren plan, Elizabeth Warren, who was running for president before, she introduced just days ago a federal bill, a congressional bill, that would create a federal moratorium on rental evictions that would block any state, any county, any city from evicting you during this pandemic all the way into next year. So this is in addition to free rent. It would ensure that you are not evicted as well. So there's a lot of things on the table when we're talking about rent. We're talking about free rent money. We're talking about free utilities. We're talking about not being evicted now while members of Congress are on vacation and sipping a margarita and with their feet in the jacuzzi in the Bahamas. We're talking about no eviction coming into next year under a proposed bill. We have a lot of great things, and let me answer some of your 65 questions from yesterday's video. Maddie Johnson, it's not that you just don't want to pay rent, it's that we went up on the rents, can't double it. Yeah, a lot of landlords, some people have dropped in the comments that their landlords have increased the rent during the pandemic. Shame on them. Richard, landlords are kicking people out. It's just very disconcerting. Maddie, why can't the state of Alabama renew the no eviction? White Buffalo design. Texas evicting people at high speed. Kevin Lee, hey, is it too late for me? Hey, it's me here in Texas. We've already had to move out in 2 weeks. I can't pay June and July. Ridiculous. The landlord has increased it. Lloyd Cochran, you need to let everyone know when the moratorium ends. You owe all that back rent. Yes, I mean, I would assume you understand that, but I'm going to fully explain that. A moratorium means you can't be evicted. It doesn't mean you get the obligation for rent alleviated. You still owe the rent ultimately sometime. You still owe the rent, but a landlord cannot evict you for not being able to pay the rent. Steve Bivens, I have to commend you regarding the pandemic and related legislation. You have absolutely the best and most informative videos on the internet. Keep up the great work on your viewers and stay safe. Well, thank you, Steve Bivens. Very kind. He says you have the best and most informative videos on the internet. Wow. Interceptor, stay safe and positive. Well, thank you. Damn D, I did not receive my first stimulus check. Karen Taylor, what about the state of Utah? Here we go. We have a lot of viewers saying, what about my state? Just Google your state, Google Utah rent moratorium, and you will see the answer. Israel, yay, Maine. Yeah, I did mention Maine had relief for viewers. How about Tennessee? What about Massachusetts? What happens when the pandemic is over and you owe the rent? Heather Rivera. Then you have to pay the rent. Now, if the HEROES bill passes, the rent will be paid from a grant fund if you can't pay the rent. Terry, thank you for keeping us updated on holiday. Yes, I'm working on the holiday for you. Julie, I live in Tennessee. Our state is red. You forgot Rhode Island. How about Indiana? Manuel says Indiana was extended to August 1st. Good job, Indiana. Julia, is this just rent or mortgage payments also? Okay, so I didn't do that in this video, but I'll just tell you. I did in the other videos. Under the CARES Act, there is a moratorium on mortgage forbearance. So a bank cannot foreclose on you for your mortgage during the pandemic up to a date, and it's about late July. That date is coming up. The HEROES bill proposes to extend that date. How do I apply for the utility money? You don't yet, Isabel. Isabel, it hasn't been approved. Jacqueline, thank you for the info. Pamela, how about Louisiana, Texas? Tanya, how about Texas? How about Rhode Island, says Carolyn. What about Texas, says Manuel? What about Mississippi, says Lily? What about Ohio, says Christy? Just type your state into Google and type in your state's name and also add the words rent moratorium, and you will get the result right away. I can't do 50 states in one video. I would literally be going to 45 minutes of really time. What about Georgia? You skipped Ohio. What about Norfolk? California's moratorium is left to cities and counties. You skipped South Carolina. I didn't skip states. Boy, hating the messenger here. I did not skip states. I read from an article that didn't mention 50 states. So it's just, Lord. What about Texas? I have a lot of viewers in Texas. I know that. What about Alabama? What about Ohio? It's good to know I know what states my viewers are in. I have not forgotten you. I did not ignore you. I did not skip over you. That was the way that article was written yesterday. It did not mention all 50 states. If you want to know if your state has a rent moratorium currently, go into Google and type in your state plus rent moratorium. And you will see if the words rent eviction or something like that comes up in the results, and it'll say whether or not your state currently has a moratorium or not. If you have questions in today's video, drop in the comments below and we may answer them in tomorrow's recording. Coming up, EIDL with a favorite personality. As always, stay with LA for more.